Then, of course, I mentioned that we are giving quarterly progress report to FOSSAD, and DG Baleni is very instrumental in ensuring accountability. Now, these initiatives that I'm talking about, and that's why I was invited here today, is to talk about the preventable root causes of crime issues and how we're dealing with it and how we're going to deal with it as the whole of government and whole of society approach. But critically, and because this summit now is talking about the SAPS, I thought it important to include slides on the responsibility of SAPS in this whole thing. And now this overall, if you look at the title of this summit, the overall subtext requires that the police or policing must become more efficient. We're talking about efficiencies now for the next few days. And this means that SAPS must do more and do better with the existing or fewer resources they have. We've been told by National Treasury there's no new money coming to any department, and we need to work with what we have, even if it means reprioritizing our projects and our work. So we're saying that SAPS is required to adapt to the evolving policing landscape. That is what today's topic is about. So what we're recommending is that, and I'm happy to see the Chief Farrow here, but it would have been nice if we had all the other chiefs from the municipalities or from the metros, that bylaws cannot be ignored anymore. And there's a triple mandate for Metro Police, which is bylaw enforcement, crime prevention, and traffic police. They have to focus on bylaw enforcement. General Mosimola, when he was DNC policing and ourselves at the Civilian Secretariat a few years ago, we went to DCOG to tell them that, you know what, bylaw enforcement is so critical, it needs to be enforced. So we're sending that message that bylaw enforcement is very important, needs to be enforced, and you shouldn't only be focusing on crime prevention and traffic enforcement. But also SAPS partnering with municipalities. So it's working quite well in some provinces. There was a best practice in Mpumalanga a few years ago when we did a MINMEC oversight visit, and we found one of the police stations was partnering very well with the institutions at local government level and deal with the antisocial behavior, which sometimes can be classified as bylaws, and SAPS doesn't want to do it because it's a bylaw. So we're saying, but you have to prevent that behavior from escalating further. So even if it's SAPS at station level, you have to deal with these issues, deal with it so that it doesn't escalate and become serious criminal acts. And then offender mediation of less serious crime or petty offenses, signaling that antisocial behavior will not be tolerated. David Bruce wrote an article 2 days ago, strangely, which speaks about victim offender mediation. But we're saying divert offenders, petty offenders, from becoming serious criminals. And if at police station level you can do this through the referral systems that are already in place. Now we know these things have been tested before and they don't work as much. And we're not saying that police must become social workers. Don't get me wrong. It's not about, but it's about referral systems to prevent this thing from getting worse. So this also allows that SAPS to become more efficient and better at doing their policing work, but also addressing community concerns at police station level. We don't want punitive actions for children who are, even if it means policemen talking to the grandparents and the parents at that level because you're familiar with the communities that you work with, rather divert petty offenders than let them go through the court system. So this approach, we say, seeks to create a caring relationship between police and members of the community, as well as allows opportunities to leverage the other state departments through the referral system. And it also lessens the burden on the criminal justice system, because we know how burdened the criminal justice system is. And the ultimate goal of the relationship is building community trust and legitimacy in the police and other departments. I put in this, the next slide talks about what we mean by legitimacy and trust. So when we did our state of policing study in 2018, this table that I have projected here was our framework of analysis. And it talks about the 9 dimensions of democratic policings. There are 10 boxes, but the last one is the result or the outcome. So don't look at legitimacy. But if we do want legitimacy and we want trust as an outcome for the police, then we need to look at the first column. What do we put into our policemen in order to enable them to do their job? So firstly, they have to be equipped with knowledge. They have to be efficient and effective. They need to be ethical and accountable. They need to be rights-based, and most important, they are also citizens, so they need to be treated well. And then if you give them these, if you equip them with all these variables, you will get a policeman that is objective, that is responsive, and is empathetic. And if you have these variables, then you get that trust that the community has to have in the police, and you get a legitimate police service. So, in conclusion, Minister, Deputy Ministers, station-level policing is the conduit to community safety, and this is what the discussion is going to be about, that if we get these things right, then we don't need more detectives, we don't need more policemen, we don't need a clogged criminal justice system. So let's strengthen our police stations. And the police need to adapt to different approaches. Because of our funding crisis, we're not getting more money and more resources. How do we adapt to different approaches? And doing this, we can reduce the burden on policing and the criminal justice system and prioritize prevention. And the responsible departments and local government in particular have to ensure implementation of the strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Omar. To facilitate the discussion flowing from this, we have a panel that will answer a few questions to stimulate the discussion. Thereafter, we will open it to the floor for further questions so that we can, in the theme of the summit, look at the issues and also propose solutions in terms of optimizing our efficiency in the SAPS. And we now looked at the strategy that we have in place. Just to remind you, as I said, that the National Development Plan is a goal that we have in 2030. And the National Development Plan requires us in 2030 that we should have people living in South Africa who feel safe at home, at school, and at work. And they enjoy a community life free of fear. Women walk free in the streets, and children play safely outside. The police service is well-resourced and professionally staffed by highly skilled officers who value their work. Serve the country, safeguard lives, and provide service without discrimination. Protect the peaceful against the violence, and respect the rights to equality and justice. I just want you to have that picture in your head when we're going forward in our discussions. And in that, the SAPS role is to strengthen the criminal justice system, make the police service professional, demilitarize the police, build safety using an integrated approach, as you heard in the presentation, and build community participation in safety. Our priorities to achieve that is improving community safety, combating gender-based violence and femicide, addressing senior and often serious and organized crimes, preventing, combating, and investigating money laundering and terror financing. Now, when we're going forward, we have opened a space on this forum for expressing critical views, for sharing ideas, and for building networks so that we can advance the social justice that we are looking at. We want an open dialogue, we want constructive critique, but most importantly, those of us who come from within the SAPS, we want a period of self-reflection so that we are really looking at ourselves in terms of how we're contributing to this process. Now, as I indicated, we will put a series of questions to our panelists to stimulate the discussion, and thereafter we will open the floor. We will start with Ms. Omar, who presented you the strategy, and I think there's 2 or 3 things that we would like you to expand on, Ms. Omar. The first one is that the previous NCPS strategy, it was plagued by the spectre of the integrated activities and the non-commitment by other stakeholders. Now, what's different with the ICVPS, what will ensure participation and commitment by the same stakeholders in this new strategy, and how do we, as the SAPS, get them to the table and take part in the actions? Because quite often, and you're going to hear from the ground level people, the SAPS initiates, leads, and eventually runs most of these things. So what will be different here, and what tools does the SAPS have to ensure that participation? Another aspect is that the SAPS is expected to adopt a developmental approach in implementing the strategy. Now, a development approach presupposes that you have a fully capacitated institution to be able to do that. And as you outlined, there is the resource challenge. So how do we compromise between what we say and how we're going to do it? Because the expectation for the SAPS obviously would be much more than their capacity. So how do we close this gap that the policy provides us? And we see some similarities, which was also explained in the ICVPS, that during the NCPS, we went into an operational mode with the National Crime Combating Strategy because the situation became unsustainable under the NCPS. And then there was a lot of arrests, and this ICGS system became flooded and unable to cope. Are we not now in the same cycle? Because we have Operation Chanela, which basically is doing the same thing in the climate of the ICVPS. And an important aspect that you mentioned, Davis Bruce's article, where he says that we should not try and achieve the expectation of general visible policing, and we should be more targeted. So I think if you could indicate to us how these aspects would be covered, I think it will stimulate some discussion. You have the platform.
Thank you very much, Program Director. So the NCPS did propose a developmental approach to safety and policing. I think part of the problem was that firstly, it was too focused on SAPS. It wasn't a whole of government approach. And when it was, when other government departments were required to do their part, there was no ownership. So if you read all the literature that came after why the NCPS did not take on, it's because other government departments did not take ownership of their role in safety. And then it was also led by the Minister of Safety and Security at that time. And the Minister of Safety and Security had no line function authority over other ministers. We are fortunate that we have the cluster system now, where, and we have FOSSAD, like I mentioned earlier, where FOSSAD sits from the presidency level, chaired by the DG of the presidency, and all the other departments are accountable. So that's why we are hopeful that the Integrated Crime and Violence Prevention Strategy will be implemented, because the cluster system is in place, and more importantly, the presidency is championing it in a way. There were quite a few questions there. SAPS development, incorrect approach for SAPS. So it's not fair to SAPS that SAPS implements a developmental approach. They have a specific role, which is to combat crime, which is very operational, and while it should be proactive, it shouldn't be too reactive as well. But safety is a whole of government approach, and that's what we keep emphasizing, and we keep coming back to that. Operation Chanela and roadblocks. Our state of policing study showed that roadblocks are too costly, and you divert too many resources into one area. So it's something that SAPS needs to re-look at, and then you also clog and burden the criminal justice system. So if Operation Chanela is effective from Thursday to Sunday, you do all these arrests. On Monday, people are let out on bail. So is this the most efficient, effective way of implementing policing operations? And then, yes, David Bruce, from what I read about the article, is talking about targeted visible policing. So he says, just don't do visible policing wholly, but it's something that the communities do want. We know that. So the communities want to see policing, but if David is arguing that you have to have targeted visible policing, which I suppose it should be something that we must look at as well. But I hope I've covered everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Omar. General Libya, Dr. Libya. In the NCPS, the transnational crime was highlighted that it's one of the pillars of the NCPS. But in the ICVPS, it's a bit more opaque. It's not specific in terms of it. Now, how does this impact on the DPCI-led drive to address transnational crime, organized crime, which is very much so a topic these days if you look at the media in terms of our daily business? And surely, as a priority now, it will have to compete with other issues as far as resourcing, etc., other aspects. So we just need to get a sense in terms of the ICVPS versus the NCPS, where do we stand with transnational organized crime?
Thank you very much, Doctor, and good morning to the Minister, the Deputy Ministers, the National Commissioner. Let me say all protocol observed. In fact, transnational organized crime or organized crime, all of these things are incorporated into this plan. As the DPCI, our main focus is national priority offenses. And in that, when you unpack what is national priority offenses, mainly we speak of three main categories. That is serious organized crime, serious commercial crime, and serious corruption. You ask a question related to transnational organized crime. What is transnational organized crime? It is something that resort within our serious organized crime. Transnational organized crime is multifaceted. You obviously have to be indicating which focus are you interested in. You have got things like human trafficking. In human trafficking, there is also the element of violence, because once trafficked, some of these things are exposed to rape. You have got the weapons that move from one jurisdiction to South Africa. You have got those weapons that then come to be utilized in cash in transit, police killings, and the like. Otherwise, most of the organized criminal activities have got this international leg of it. We were talking about the illegal mining. Who is actually dealing with this illegal mining? Are they South Africans, or they cross the border too? We are obviously going to be playing a role, because this strategy is calling upon the various role players, the public, law enforcement, and other relevant role players. It is important, and that is what we actually do in the National Priority Crime Operational Committee. We need all of these relevant role players. I was actually interested in highlighting the issue of criminals targeting police officials, because that is also part of organized criminal activities. It results within that space, because when criminals find it difficult to be able to commit the crimes that they want to be committing, they target law enforcement officials. Looking at the past 7 years, 628 police officials were killed. And then we have got 701 arrests that were effected. We also produced 131 life imprisonment during that period. But the criminals will always ensure that they target police officials so that they are able to reach the public. So without deliberating much on this, but otherwise, yes, this strategy affect us, but positively, it will assist us in that with the limited resources that we have, we will be able to tap in other environments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Lieutenant General Masekiri. There's three aspects that we want you to respond on. The first one is the strategy requires integration of the different stakeholders. And the example that we would use now is there's a newly established border management agency, which raises the question, are we not duplicating certain resources? Because the SAPS is also at the borders. And now we have Home Affairs with Border Management Agency. So how is the role of the BMA at the borders impacting on the SAPS? Because if they are responsible for border control, does that not free up the SAPS resources to conduct policing activities elsewhere? The constitutional mandates only one police agency, and the police authorities such as the Metro, they flow from legislation that has been developed in line with the Constitution. But at the border port of entry now, we need to get an understanding, how does it play out? And we need to have a significant point of clarity if we want to optimize the policing. We have at some of the ports between 500 to 1,000 police officials. Is it now not a duplication, and does it not free up resources that we are looking for so desperately? That's the first aspect. The second one is the implementation of this strategy premises on the district development model, which places the demand on stations and districts in this respect. Are they capacitated and are they ready to respond to this aspect in terms of your opinion? If so, if not, how are we going to address it? Because there are going to be demands on policing as well as part of the integrated approach. And then obviously the article by Dave Bruce on general visible policing, I don't know if you've had sight of it, but basically he premises that we are too preoccupied with trying to achieve this general high profile visible policing, and we should rather change our strategy and be more targeted, because this goes, again with the question that I asked Ms. Omar, because we are busy with the Chanela operations, etc. And is that not targeted? If not, how? What's your opinion on that matter, so that we can put it in perspective as well?
Thank you very much, Dr. Naidu. Perhaps to start with the last question of the preoccupation of crime prevention approaches that Chanela seeks to be focused on, and to give perspective to what Chanela was trying to address. I think on the first presentation that ICVPS was trying to highlight, Ms. Omar was trying to highlight, is exactly how the South African Police Service took Operation Chanela to unpack the responsibilities, as was outlined here earlier, looking specifically on the intelligence-led, or what was termed at Group 1 yesterday as evidence-based. The evidence-based and intelligence-led, for me, they somehow find themselves in the same space, because the Operation Chanela's intention is to look at where crime matters most, and you dedicate resources accordingly, meaning you will not deploy 500 personnel if the risk or the challenge at that particular hotspot that has been identified requires only 100 or 200. That's the first point. The second point of Operation Chanela is also looking at getting the whole of government and whole of society. That is why where you have a successful E2 projects, you will find them operating at the same time with the police during Operation Chanela and other departments. And as Ms. Oma has indicated earlier, Dr. Naidu, on the issues of the signing of the memorandum with the metros, gives effect to that metros as well will work as the law enforcement capacity that will augment what the South African Police Service is having. So on that last question, that it's preoccupying policing in addressing the high profile, what I will want to highlight in that is that no, and just to be specific, that preoccupation is actually unpacking what matters most in the communities, and that gives the opportunity as well of the communities to direct and assist the police in doing the operations. On the second question of the implementation of IVPS as a DDM model approach, Doctor, I want to indicate to this collective that is exactly what we wanted to do by unpacking from the ICVPS. We had the national policing policy, we had the national policing strategy that was looking at specifics in as far as South African Police Service is concerned. And yes, to take the work where it matters most at the district level. That is why the district commissioners are responsible to ensure that they do submit their plans that will address the challenges that they are having, and to coordinate resources within the districts itself. If you have to get people from other stations to address the hotspots in that particular district, that is what we're trying to address in unpacking all these strategies and looking at what is required from the Operation Chanela and the Crime Prevention and Community Action Plan that was adopted alongside Operation Chanela in ensuring that collaboration amongst law enforcement, the justice, crime prevention and the security cluster departments, as well as the civil society. So on the question of the capacity as the police alone, I think it came with, if not all commissions yesterday addressed it, Commission 1, that was the first point that the researcher highlighted in terms of the capacity. But in order for us to respond to that capacity challenges, it's where we want to put all other law enforcement and other capacity that is within the communities together in order for us to better respond. But you will also recall that there was an issue to say, in order for the strategy to be better implemented, will require to have a capacity that was highlighted as well with the earlier discussion yesterday. I think the president of POPCRU also came in to weigh very hard on the issues of the capacity so that we don't overburden other areas within the police service. But the intention of putting everybody together in terms of the district development model approach is exactly to try and address that. It will never be enough, but it's a work in progress. On the issue of the integration of stakeholders, Part of my responsibilities includes the nut joints, where we look at various other committees within the nut joints itself, that it's looking at specifics. We have priority committee that is looking at immigration and border security management. We also have the priority subcommittee that is looking at a general crime prevention in a form of priority crimes and priority challenges that we might be faced with, over and above those that are focused and specific on the issues of major events and other priority committees. So BMA, as part of the JCPS cluster, is also part of the nut joints to ensure that every activity that happens within the cluster itself will look at the issues of that integration and ensuring that we get all the resources required. So on the issues of the borders, that is where you'll find BMA has specific functions in terms of the BMA Act as adopted. There are some of the departments that became or converted into the BMA, and there are those departments such as the South African Police Service, the South African Defense, which you correctly said they are constitutionally mandated to address root causes of crime and ensuring the border security. That is the South African Defense Force. So there is no collusion. There shouldn't be any collusion if all that are operating in that space operate within their line function. So there are specific functions that the South African Police Service is expected to do as mandated by the Constitution to ensure that crime in this country is responded and investigated. You will hear the BMA also indicating that when crime is reported, it is going to the police station and the investigation thereof is done by the police. When there are issues of challenges, I think in recent days we had the Mozambique issue, where the public order policing was required to go and respond and quell the challenges that were to be expected in the borders. So the presence of the police is to do classical police function and leave the duty that must be done by BMA to BMA, which is the processing and ensuring the migration of the right people. But at that space, if there is somebody that requires police attention, you do not have to travel 30 kilometers to the next police station to get the police to respond. But the presence of the police in the space is to make sure that they respond adequately and do their work. To say that it will free the police, yes, maybe to a large extent. Those police officers that were assisting prior to the adoption and the implementation of the BMA will then be released so that they focus and do what is policing. We know the challenges that we are having in the borders in this country, where the porous borders issues are on the lips of every South Africans, and the issues that are coming from the borders. So you need the whole government approach. You need all these departments to coexist within the border security management to ensure that we do not allow such a gap to happen, and we see people coming into the country and having to address them locally. But we're trying to make sure that if functions and the roles of each department that is operating at the border security management implement their responsibilities, we will soon have or ease the issues of crime in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General. Lieutenant General Sibia. On the aspect of integration as well, looking at the recent high-profile cases, it highlights problems as far as integration is concerned, especially between the SAPS and the NPA. During the group sessions yesterday, it was also highlighted there's a gap between what the NPA perceives as their mandate and what the SAPS has to do, which is resulting in the kind of media that we're getting now as far as certain high-profile cases. Can you expand on this aspect from the SAPS perspective? What are the challenges and what can we do to remedy this in the light of the ICVPS? Because it's crucial that we, in order to move forward, we overcome what are the challenges so that we can smooth the way. That's the first aspect. The second one, whilst the DPCI commented on organized crime, you have certain responsibilities as far as organized crime is concerned. Maybe some comments from you with respect to the ICVPS and organized crime. And then we didn't have much as far by way of crime intelligence and their role in this strategy. It's not highlighted or ring-fenced. Maybe we could get your comments on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. Please allow me to stand on the protocol already observed. To start with, Minister, when the National Development Plan was established in 2012, it aimed at introducing what we call a capable state, where investigators or capacity that is actually built in such a way that it is resourceful. We have a resourceful state, we are a capable state, our technology is there. When I look at where we are now, 5 years into almost towards the end of the 2030 vision, 2030, we are still very far. When I look at the crime levels where we are now, and you look at the cash in transit, you look at the extortions, everything, the whole intention of the 2030 vision was to make sure that people are and they feel safe. But can we say that today? No, certainly we cannot. And over and above, when I look at the situation in terms of the question that was asked as to high-profile cases between us as the South African Police Service and the NPA, I would say Vision 2030 is a roadmap. It tells and it brings everyone to the table, all the respective different departments, government and outside government, to work together and making sure that we collaborate. But what I see missing is the implementation plan, where we are able to implement that what is written or what is directed by the Vision 2030. Because most of the time when crime is committed, it is expected that all of us should work together. Crime is a phenomenon, is a social phenomenon, which is a negative, which affects the public. It involves many, not only a particular environment. Now, if we arrest, if we investigate, we arrest, then we need to work together with the NPA in such a way that when a person is prosecuted, we still carry on working together to an extent that even when a person is sentenced, correctional services come in and rehabilitate the person, and also have a situation where we have other relevant departments that are able to reintegrate the person back into the society. Now, this thing of pointing fingers, where the police point fingers at the NPA, or the NPA feels that, no, maybe it's because the investigators or the investigation was not conducted properly. I think it's something that is regrettable. But what we need to do is to make sure that we follow the roadmap as it is indicated directly, to say that as a country, starting from being proactive, when crime is being prevented, it must, in the event it cannot be prevented, it must be investigated. And as you investigate, you also need other relevant role players. At some point, we were in the Western Cape. with the National Commissioner and the former minister, and we were in one of the locations where it was more like gang violence, and we found that the children were not at school. They are there at home, and the older ones are still there, unemployed. No one is at work, children are not at school, all they know and is drugs and gangs. Now, you can realize from the onset that you need many other socio-economic departments that should take part in this whole situation. Now, you will realize that once you have a situation like that, you are moving far from Vision 2030, where children can be at school, play safely, without a fear of crime, everybody going to work, women and children able to walk to school and to work. But at this present moment, as you can see, that we are sitting with this situation where, in fact, the people are not feeling safe. And in fact, there are some of us who even go to an extent of saying, no, the police are criminals. They don't trust the police. Now, how do we move into that space of trying to close the gap and making sure that we close the gap, we deal with crime, we join hands, we collaborate with all other relevant role players? That what we need to do is just to follow on Vision 2030. And what I also want to indicate is that in building a capable state, and I want to differ with what I heard Ms. Omar Rabach saying, that you need to prevent crime and you need to flush in resources in preventing crime, then you may not need detectives. It is this kind of mentality that actually draws the country backward, in a sense that each and every imbizo where you go, they complain about their investigation, not about crime prevention. We've got porous borders, we've got mushrooming squatter camps, we've got an environmental design where the police are not even able to participate or to police. We've got crimes that is being committed inside the houses. But that crime, once a person comes and opens a case, it needs to be investigated. If you say we don't need investigators, we need to flush in 80% of the resources into visible policing. But we've got a lot of own goals where goals are coming in, they need to be investigated. Who must investigate those cases if then we don't have the detectives to investigate? So we need to capacitate the detective more than anything else. So that type of mentality really needs to change. To say that the detectives are not really an important part in the organization. They need to capacitate the detective. We need to be compared to the FBIs. We need to be able to be skillful. We need to be able to have technology. We are living in the 5th and 6th industrial revolution, but we're still operating in the 3rd revolution here in the country, because we don't have and we don't follow what is mentioned in Vision 2030, where we need to capacitate, we need to bring in technology, we need to bring in resources, we need to capacitate, we need to train people in such a way that they are skillful. So I want to say, Minister, I need to stress this one. The detectives are the face and are the one who are representing the South African Police Services, because this is mostly what you see in Kwekwe's case, because they are complaining about investigation. They are not complaining about visible policing. So I'm just saying we need to move away from that type of mentality. Secondly, when you talk about organized crime and transnational organized crime, organized crime syndicates are more operating like successful businessmen. Maximum profit, lowest possible risk. We need to have capacity that is able to work and address organized crime. And we need to be able to have resources and capacity in place in addressing the respective phenomena, whether you're talking organized crime, drugs, we're talking about cash in transit. Now, as we can speak, I can tell you now that we've got an active kidnapping that where a person was kidnapped almost in October last year. We're still struggling to find the person as a country. To date, a person is still kidnapped, and we are not, we've got the DPC, we've got intelligence, we've got all the structures in place, but we are unable to deal with that type of crime. So I want to say we need to act with speed in making sure that we capacitate our structures as stipulated in the Vision 2030. We need to make sure that we train our people, and we rely mostly, we introduce what we call technology, and we also need to bring in all other relevant stakeholders to work with us in such a way that we are going to be able to address crime, and effectively so. It's all about systems. In conclusion, it's all about systems. I was listening to the minister this morning talking about the systems. I want to say, if you want to get brilliant results, you need to have brilliant systems in place as well. No matter how many people you have and how many doctors you have in the system, but if you don't have brilliant systems in place, you will not get brilliant results. So what we need to do is to make sure that we've got an implementation plan that will be able to take us through, to be able to implement fully the Vision 2030 strategy. And then lastly, I want to say that the ICVPS is advocating a collective and collaborative approach, starting from when crime is started up until when the suspect is arrested, rehabilitated and reintegrated. Now, we are being held by a number of criminals inside prison. We're keeping them inside prison, they are studying inside prison, they are completing their LLBs and the degrees and everything, but we don't have a system where we are able to say, let them come out, let us reintegrate them. I have permission to use this name. Let's take for an example, Advocate Bulelani Nguka. He was arrested, he completed this LLB, he came out of prison, he became the head of the NPA. But in this case, in this world today, we've got so many people inside prison who study, but you cannot get employed. I'm sitting with a lot of cases where people want to be employed. They've got qualifications, but because they've got criminal record, they're going to be reintegrated in the society. Now, those are the things that we need to pertinently earmark, focus on. Those are the lowest hanging fruit. So we need to make sure that we've got an implementation strategy to deal with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jeno. Mr. Masilela, there's two aspects as far as community policing we would need you to clarify for us. Firstly, the impact of current policies. As you see from the strategy and all the discussions, there's a very high priority on the partnerships with community policing, etc. But the internal policies provide us with a challenge. We heard yesterday that more than 70 million rand was allocated for resourcing of the CPF. But policy, that's now SAPS, as well as the National Treasury policy, prevents certain aspects from happening in terms of the providing of resources directly to the CPF, etc. We would like to hear your experiences of this as the CPF. What does it mean for the progress in this regard? And the second one is the recent high-profile incidents involving community patrollers and CPF members highlights the aspect of safety. And can we get your input from the CPF as far as those aspects of the safety of people involved in these partnerships? What are we missing? What should we consider? And things like that, so that we can improve the partnership and make it safe for such partnership to continue. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Program Director. Let me greet the Minister and say all the protocol is then humbly observed. Maybe before I even go there, I must just mention that, Minister, community policing relations, as communities, we are not here to do your work. We're not part of the partnership to impersonate or to do what the Constitution of the Republic gives the police rights to do. So we're here to support the police, we're here to assist the police, we're here to give one of the most important aspects of crime fighting, which is community intelligence. By the way, it's for free, Minister, and it's available most of the time. Pillar 4 of the ICPVS says that service delivery for communities, or effective service deliveries for communities. From Director, the resources, or should I say the funding of community policing, it's a continuous project. Because if it wasn't for the issue of high unemployment, you wouldn't have the same people all the time. It's a voluntary process. It's a voluntary mechanism of assisting in the fight against crime. Therefore, you wouldn't have the same people all the time. But it's also very important to keep in mind that it makes easier to work with the same intellectual at different levels, whether it being at the stations, being at the district, and being at the provinces, and eventually at national. So the funding, very important, Minister. Thank you very much for the 70 million. Give us, hopefully we can get more at some point. But it creates also a problem for provincial commissioners and provincial chairpersons as to say, now there are certain guidelines that are dictated somewhere, and we don't know. Maybe that's the police way of doing things, that you give funding and you must give a guideline on how the funding must utilized and spent, so that your auditing processes are also met and you are not found wanting as a accounting officer of the police at the province or at national or at district and so forth. But these things are not discussed so that the station level CPFs can also understand that the funding cannot buy certain things. You are told certain things you cannot buy because we have an issue with service provider X, and the case is still standing somewhere at the NPA store and hasn't been finalized. Because of that, you can't spend on certain things. Most of what you would have wanted the communities will need today in the fight against crime, two things, simple: data, airtime. That's it. You can give us the cars, you can give us all the other things, thank you very much, but we can still attend the meeting while I'm sitting in my office and attend the CPF meeting online. But I need data for that, and then I need technology to be able to do that. E-policing has been spoken so many times, but I don't know whether there's a will or an appetite to make sure that those at the station, and obviously you have organized this through districts, and then other stations will benefit from the district. But I don't know whether those that are given a task to run our supply chain, those that are given a task to run the SAPS, TMS, those that are given the right to be the CFOs at the provinces, they have their KPI. Maybe the KPI needs to change a bit, because they will apply the same process that they spend when they are doing the spending on the police. Yet this money is ring-fenced to speak to the community. The community part of aiding into the fight against crime through this funding have to change a bit, because, and it stays with the police purse, no problem with that, But you cannot have a situation whereby it's decided somewhere else and come to the same people that have submitted a wish list or a grocery, and this grocery is cut into half because you can't have this, not because of the money, but because there are other issues of the red tapes that goes with it. So that red tape sometimes frustrates our provinces. We might be like in other provinces, like my province, that we finish the money before it even comes. But it's a problem with the others because you might find people at around September, October, they have not spent that. So the funding, very welcomed, but obviously the guidelines, DNC, maybe should also involve some of the input so that you make it easier to procure certain things and not frustrate those supply chain. But let's talk about the safety and the participation thereof. Community police relations by nature, or community policing forums, by nature of association, you are putting yourself at risk, Doctor. We know that. And we come that knowing. Many of the CPF members, we find that they are possible victims of crime. And the question comes as to say, how can I assist, and how can I participate, and how can I add value? Because another very important government terminology is return on investment. But also, it's also what would I do for the country than what the country can do for me. So, I think I'm clear, and I represent the view that says technology, we have spoken about it, we're still going to talk about it, it's an ongoing project. But let us also make sure that those that must talk to this technology and spend on the technology, because the strategy needs funding, and the funding will only be released once we have an implementation plan. Community police relations, community safety, community development, community technology, community information network intelligence. It's what is available, is what the Act says it's at our disposal. When you then talk about the service, effective service delivery will be the simplest thing. You open a case, and it means you are aggrieved. Open a case, incident has happened, you get a case number. Sometimes that's the last time you'll have a communication. That's a problem. Automation of giving you an update. And I'm sure it has happened, or it might happen in other areas where you get a case number, maybe after a week you get a progress, maybe a suspect arrested, you get that on your SMS. That alone tells you that somebody is paying attention to your case. And then you also hear that when you're going to be appearing in court, if or the suspect has been taken to court, or suspect released on bail, you also get that on the SMS. Because the truth of the matter is that a detective very rare that will give you this information. The only time you might meet a detective is possible when you go to court, which is not right, because then a detective will have to also look at your statement. I don't want to talk about NPA, because that's another biggest headache, or should I say the justice system. You will find that communities at times take it to their own hands and create what you call vigilante groups, purely because the justice system is next to zero in terms of doing justice. If that is the case, we wouldn't have the issue of Omotoso released after 8 years, and because there's not enough. Whatever the reason of his acquittal. I know that Minister this doesn't sit with you, but there is a political willingness, Because we can put all these strategies, we can put all these resources, we can put, and we can commit. But there's a political will that must also come with this. Now I'm talking to obviously minister, the deputy ministers. There must be a political will. You can't have other departments not worrying about crime and safety and issues of safety and criminality, yet you expect to deliver service delivery. We're not going to talk about corruption. It's a cancer of the backbone. And some from where you're coming from, the communities will tell you that up until you deal with the issues of corruption, you might put as much as resources and have summits like this every year, you wouldn't find the results. But it needs that political will of the highest, and I'm happy that the president was here. And we offer view that the patroller safety, I must be honest, and to say some are pure vigilantes. Out of frustration, members of the community will organize themselves with good intentions but the wrong approach, and that will happen. But there's also an element of extortion. CPFs are not as perfect as we might think, but there are other elements that are being created, like your parallel structures that are created by politicians towards the elections, and that creates a problem for the CPFs, because then you're sitting with, especially at the local government level, our politics at the local government left a lot to be desired, because you might be an MMC this week and not be an MMC next week, yet you already put people in place, and that is your voting vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to open the floor for questions, but I'd just like to place in record that we have limited time. So there's two aspects of it. I think the point, you should be cryptic to the point, and please refrain from duplicating the comments that you might make if it's already been made. Let's give somebody an opportunity to express something different. Are the roving mics available? Okay. Right. Can you have first hand? Okay, on that side. Please identify yourself and then pose your question.
Thanks, Program Director. I'm Brigadier Mahlangu, SAPS A-Wing. I think my question will cut across the panelists, but for me, I think we're talking about efficiency and optimizing policing potential. My question will be, is there any problem that prevent, maybe let me put a background to that. I think recently we heard that there's about 140,000, if not more, of DNA cases that still need to be processed through our forensic science laboratories. Now my question is there anything that prevents that function can be outsourced to private pathologists to deal with the DNA analysis? Because my point is that, I mean, if I go to a pathologist to draw blood, my result will be available within a few minutes. I can get those results. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other hands? Advocate? Advocate Bukoli here?
Thank you, Chair. Just two issues for me. One relates to how different will the implementation of the ICV strategy compared to what plagued the NCPS. The answer is simple. It lies in the question of the political will. Because no sooner had the NCPS been adopted in 1996, SAPS came up with what we said, the National Crime Combating Strategy. That was the problem. And even then in the next administration, the second administration, the line was more on crime combating and less on crime prevention. So I think we need then to make sure that at the executive level and at the level of departments, there's a firm commitment and a clear leadership that is unequivocal on the question of factoring in crime prevention. So that's the issue that we're faced with. Secondly, on the question of organized crime, we tend to want to separate corruption from organized crime. Generally, told us of the multifaceted nature of organized crime. And now corruption is the key enabler of organized crime. And it leads to many other crimes that arise out of corruption, but connected with the entire network of organized crime. So we need to do away. Because now, internationally, in terms of the UN, there's a movement towards ensuring that the two UN conventions speak to each other. The one on transnational organized crime, as well as the one on corruption, because of the fact that this becomes one whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, hand here and then General Aseneng in the back. Where's the mics? Yeah.
Thank you, Program Director. I want to talk about the bylaws when it comes to municipalities, as per Mrs. Oma. We can assist as the Metro Police departments and commissioners to assist in the fight of crime with bylaw enforcement and also to passing bylaws via our different municipal councils. I think it's important that we go back and in our commissions that we do a look at what is the constraints of fighting crime when it comes to bylaws and then go back to our different districts. Because some of the bylaws has been passed years ago, and so we do have grey areas where we need to go back, look maybe at our top 10 that is contributing when it comes to municipalities to crime, and then assist with that drafting that bylaws. The second thing I want to say about bylaws is not only the Metro Police departments in municipalities that must enforce bylaws. You also have, if you look at problem buildings, you have building control that got a bylaw that necessarily not being enforced. We need to go back and make sure that each and every department within the municipalities enforce their respective bylaws when it comes to crime generators. Then also we need to make sure that the chiefs or the commissioners of the Metro Police then have a committee where all the departments that must enforce bylaws, they must be part of the committee and make sure South African Police Service is part of it and other external role players, and then identify within our districts where is the crime generators where bylaws can assist, and then we need to bring all the departments on board. That must be enforced. We already started within the city of Tshwane and it really works. So that is a contribution that I can bring, and I think it must happen as a matter of urgency, and it will reduce the crime generators and previously called B crimes within our different municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you. General Aseneng.
Thank you very much, Minister DMs, National Commissioner, protocol observed. My question, comment would be that the objects of policing are clearly outlined in the Constitution, Section 205. And in order for us to be able to discharge those objects, then we decided to structure the organization in terms of visible policing, detectives, and so on. But the reason for our existence is as enshrined in Section 205. Now, I want to understand the strategies, and there are many, that we have put in place for the past 30 or so years. Why, according to us, are they not working? Whether it's the National Crime Prevention Strategy, whether it's the integrated, why are they not working? In our commission yesterday, I said to the minister, and I would want the panel also to respond, also given what General Sibia was saying. Currently, we are measuring ourselves in terms of the release of crime statistics. Quarterly crime statistics. It was yearly then. The question is, do we, all of us, believe that these crime statistics that we are using reflect or talk to the objects of policing? And I'm not going to recite those objects of policing. Do they talk to that? And do they address what we are talking about in terms of Vision 2030 and the vision and mission of SAPS? We have had many pilot projects, and I'm concluding. We put structures in place, and we never conclude them. And I hope this is not yet another pilot project. Your OCCs and whatever, every national commissioner who has come in, they've had their own plan. Monocyte, crackdown, Chanela, and whatever. We keep on changing. We are having structures, your OCCs, your war rooms, they are never concluded. We pilot. So is the problem the strategies, or is it capacity building and implementation? That's my story.
Thank you very much. Okay, there's two hands in the back there. Okay, the first one. Please identify yourself.
Good morning, MC. My name is Miles Budu. The Miles Budu you know that hasn't changed, but for the past 30 years in a democratic dispensation. That walked in errand, tight, stay on the right side of the law, never take a no for an answer. Minister, it is still me. There is a lot that has been said. I'm lucky that when the president was on the stage yesterday, I was around. And I heard him say, we must be brutal, honest. We must speak truth to power, to justice and authority without any fear of contradiction. And I heard him talk about, for the first time, the causes of crime and violence. And I see your mission statement says to prevent and combat crime. I thought I was going to come here this morning and see to prevent and combat crime, violence, and the root causes thereof. But I've heard it from one of the representatives that the root causes of crime needs to be put on the table. Poverty, inequality. The president stopped very short to say economic inequality as well, unemployment and unemployability. Let me conclude, because conclude I shall. I've heard, is it Dr. Omar spoke about the victim-offender mediation. And I want this summit or seminar must double-check whether at present the victim-offender dialogue thing and this victim-offender mediation thing, is it constitutional? Because nowhere in the Constitution did you get a chapter, a section and a subsection and a paragraph that deals with the victims of crime and violence, regardless of the fact that we've got the Victims' Rights Charter that was completed in 2007 already, and it is gathering dust somewhere. And finally, the Community Policing Forum. What is the relationship between the Community Policing Forum and the Green Beans, Mapanya-Panyas, crime prevention, blah, blah, blah? Because I see the Green Beans being well resourced financially, materially, infrastructurally, and managerially. I don't see that with the Community Policing Forum. And we also would like to see Mapanya-Panyas for service delivery. That would also maybe assist. The service delivery is water, electricity, and leaking pipes and so that we need to bring in such a structure that Mapanya-Panyas arrest, service delivery, make sure that people get their services and so forth. And I can go on and on, but it's fine for now. Minister, they've taken my chain at the main entrance. My chain, which is I use for when I start suffering from anxiety attack, brain waves, it assists me. So I would maybe ask that somebody ask the police to give back my chain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was that one hand back there, and then General Patikile. I see you. I see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning to our minister, to the commissioners, to the executive directors of different organizations, and let me say to all the protocol observed. Okay, I'm Nomsa Masuku from IPIT. I think you heard me well. I said to our minister. Thank you very much. Okay, on the discussion of today, I'm interested more especially on crime prevention and this operation that are being done, the Operation Chanela and all of them. We applaud the police. They are doing very well, but I have this concern that I just need to know as to how is the SAPS trying to address it, whereby during these operations there is a lot of police brutality that happens, unnecessary so. Some of the police officers, they abuse their blue uniform. I'm talking because we've got existing cases whereby when we involve the top management, which are station commanders of the relevant areas, you will find that they protect their members, unnecessary so. Let me make an example for you. They will stop you at a roadblock. Ask for your driver's license. You give it to them, a small argument will ensue. They hit you with open hands. Then what is that? In front of the community, there are cameras nowadays. It will go viral. Then IPIT must do something. And then we've got a lot of cases that I think the members, they need to be trained and made aware that during their operations, when they are conducting their duties, they must do it according to what you've been trained to do. Don't overdo. Don't go to an extent whereby you do your job when it's supposed to be done by other units. For an example, they go to this house for an operation, whatever, Operation Chanela, let me say. They're conducting the search. Inside the house, you'll find that there's a baby of plus minus 5 to 6 months. If the owner is taking time to open the house, they will throw the tear gas inside. What is happening to people who are inside that house? Are they supposed to use that kind of tear gas inside the confined area? Those incidents, SAPS is not aware, maybe, I don't know, but yesterday during our group discussion, I realized that no, at least somebody is doing the research concerning this, because you've got a lot of civil claims that are being drawn into you by the members that are unnecessary, that are supposed to be prevented. We are not saying that members must not conduct their duties, they must, but they must do it according to the way they were trained. They must not abuse uniform. And to add to the gentleman that was just talking now about the green beans, the crime prevention wardens are doing very well, but SAPS, because they go out with them, I think they need to train them. Because whenever they go to conduct the searches or whatever they are doing outside, they are the one who start the conflict with the community, they beat the community goes to open a case, then they say, I was beaten by the police. Because the blue uniform was there within the midst when this person was assaulted and they did nothing to that. Then IPID will come in. I think I want SAPS senior officers to understand this and take this information to the junior members to say, IPID is not there as enemies. We are sharing one minister. We are just kids of the same father with different mothers. It's Tebus Kamseleko. So, whenever we are together, we are colleagues. You need to, when I'm there to correct. I'm not there to say, I'm taking you out of the service. But we need to know to say, how do we conduct our duties? So my question here is, what is the SAPS doing in order to try reduce the police brutality that is being drawn into SAPS by the junior members, that results to you to pay a lot of money to civil claims that are unnecessary, and the senior
Ma'am,
members.
I think we've got your question. If you could give us an opportunity for the last hand here, because time is now of the essence, but we've got the gist of your question. General Patekile, mic here, please. Where's the mics? Yeah.
Thank you, Program Director and Minister and Deputy Ministers and protocol observed. I almost lost what I was going to say. But I will try. I just wanted to sponsor my input on the pillars of the ICVPS. I just want to focus on the early intervention part. We know that we have problems with school dropouts. We know that the youth is not at work. That makes that a breeding ground for criminal activities. Now, Minister, we are the people that go to Parliament and get lambasted on crime and everything, which is the last part of, at the end, when everything has failed in all the value chain of the government. Now, my play would be that whoever then sits in that committee should be at the focus on the prevention, which is the early intervention, making sure that all children are in school and they complete the session. Those that could not, the TVET colleges, we get skills, technical and vocational skills, so that our youth can be self-reliant. Or otherwise, then we're going to continue every day. We are arresting and arresting and arresting. So that is the passion that I have on this part. I'm not sure how the other departments get to account what they're doing. In as far as this, I am really not sure. But I think this is one part that monitoring and accountability, whoever has to do it, should focus on those parts of the integrated violence and prevention strategy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We want to give a few responses. Sorry, we just want to, before we lose track, let's give responses and then we'll seek our time, manage our time. I don't know, General Sibia, who's going to respond on the forensic science laboratory?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, DNA cases that still need to be processed. Is there a backlog, or is there any difficulty in outsourcing? It is important to note that there is a legislative imperative that limits the possibility of outsourcing DNA analysis. And one of those is that for court cases only, police officers can submit a 212 statement in support of the investigation, not any other person. Secondly, or maybe that is why, as part of expanding the DNA footprint in the country, we are focusing mainly on partnerships with private sector to leverage on the capacity with the private sector. That is the first thing. Now, is there a backlog? There is no backlog. With the heightened operations initiated by the South African Police Service, you cannot really punish us for working hard and say there's a backlog because we are working hard and now we're bringing in more results, and as the results are flowing in, then you say there's a backlog. What is happening is that last year alone, we received more than 150,000, more than the previous year, because of the heightened operations. We've got what we call Operation Chanela. I'm sure you must have heard of Operation Chanela, where every province, every week, they participate in Operation Chanela, in the operations, where you must look at the numbers that are coming in, that are being of the people that are being arrested, where there's a need to take buccal samples and DNA. So obviously you will have a lot of workload that is coming in, but we are using also overtime to overcome the challenges. We used to receive only 300, but now this year, or per annum, but now we are receiving over 500,000. We used to receive over 300,000, but now we are receiving over 500,000. We have the same resources or less, but we are winning the fight. Where we registered a project on buccal samples, or since our challenges is on buccal samples, we spend more resources, we spend more overtime there in making sure that we address, especially we prioritize those cases that are in court or before court. It is important that to note that in 2024, 2025 alone, when you look at all the challenges, the Botswana bars, the Stelfontein, you look at the Operation Chanelas that we do every weekend. There is, of course, enough workload, but we make sure that we improvise, we put all the resources that we have, we work overtime, we push the work, so there is no backlog at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General. The other issues, Ms. Omar will respond.
Thank you, Program Director. Advocate Piccoli, yes, I agree with you. there's a whole lot of literature on why the NCPS was not fully implemented, including political will, and then the NCCS coming into operation. But yeah, we can talk about that. Bylaws, Chief Farrow, thank you. That's music to our ears. We want bylaws addressed, and we're happy to participate in your committees as well. General particular, DBE and DSD are critical role players in what you've raised in terms of the early intervention, and we are working with them on this. And yes, we're also looking at TVET colleges with DBE and the early intervention. Yesterday, the DG mentioned the first 1,000 days of a child's life. So apart from the youth that are unemployed that need to be addressed, it's also dealing with children from the time they're born until they're 4 or 5 years old, and that healthy lifestyle and healthy raising of the children, and preventing from child abuse and other abuses. On the victim offender, whether it's constitutional or not, we know the Victims' Charter is constitutional, yes, and we've been engaging with the previous minister. Used to love talking about the Victims' Charter, particularly because he also agreed with the fact that the Victims' Charter was not being implemented and that offenders were given too much privileges. So whether the victim offender is constitutional or not, but we're looking at ways in which to address victim offender issues without clogging the justice system, and that's why I raised the issue of victim offender mediation. And then General Sibia, I have to take this opportunity to address you. I never said you don't need more detectives. We're saying that once the integrated crime and violence prevention strategy is implemented, and we're talking about addressing the root causes, so socio-economic and psychosocial issues, and not, when I talk about prevention, we're not talking about visible policing and putting more money in there. So we're talking about addressing the root causes of crime. And if that's, or when that is implemented successfully, then you will need less detectives. But now our research shows you are overwhelmed. Lots of detectives are required, and that there's one detective is carrying too many dockets. So it's not about that. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister, we want to close the session. I don't know if there's any final comments that you would like to make before I close it. But then I know there's a number of hands that were raised. We're unable to accommodate them all. But what we would want you to do is to give us your issue and with your contact details to the scribe, and we will give you a response. Unfortunately, the time doesn't allow it. Okay. Minister, is there anything that you... Yes. So I can close it. Close it? Okay. Thank you very much. As I indicated, there's still several more questions, but we're unable to accommodate everybody during this program because we need to move on to the next session, or you lose the opportunity there to input as well. So, as I indicated, the scribes are here. They will take your questions and also your particulars. Where your response is required, we will make sure that you do get a response. But otherwise, thank you very much for the contributions. And panel, thank you very much as well for the responses. We will now hand over to Brigadier Dr. Reddy so that we can go on to the next part of the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give them a better round of applause for their deliberation and indulgence. Minister, thank you very much. We have completed our session in plenary, and we want to break into our commissions. But I know that everybody is tired and needs a bit of a leg stretch. So what we've decided to do, please pay attention. Sorry, can I get your attention? Thank you. What we've decided to do is allow the commissions to break. There's tea and coffee and snacks out there in the foyer. So you can grab your tea, coffee, and you can go to your commissions. Okay? So we're not going to be breaking separately. Let me allow General Rabi to take us through the themes, and I'll also invite the 5 facilitators to please come and join us in the front. While General Rabi is taking us through, it's the first breakaway group is Brigadier Dr. Bopape. Oh, sorry, Brigadier Retief. Brigadier Dr. Retief can come through. Group 2, Ms. Janine Rauch. Facilitation of Group 3, Brigadier Rasant. Breakaway Group 4, Major General Rabi, he's here. And the last, Group 5, Major General Makoba from KZN, DPC KZN. Thank you.
Minister, good morning, and to the Deputy Ministers, the management of the various entities involved here, all protocol observed. Thank you for the opportunity. We are going to follow a similar approach to what we did yesterday. I just want to get the correct breakaway groups up. Minister, I get the idea that we should have actually arranged this workshop over 3 weeks and not 3 days, because there are so many things that people would like to discuss and so little time. But in the second set of work groups that are going to start now, there will again be 5 topics that will be dealt with by the groups. This morning, everyone had an opportunity when you came into the venue to register for the group that you would like to participate in, and you got a little sticker that indicated on what group you are going to participate. The 5 groups that will be dealt with today or this morning. The first one is enhancing firearm control. That will be facilitated by Brigadier Retief. That will go the same route to yesterday. Group 1 will go to the venue that Group 1 used yesterday. The second one will be facilitated by Ms. Rauch from, as indicated there, she will deal with tackling crime and violence in South Africa. That is Group 2. They will use the same venue on that side that you used yesterday. The third group, combating organized crime and gangs in South Africa, will be facilitated by Brigadier Rasant. Group 3, same where you were yesterday. Group 4 is going to deal with addressing environmental design, population growth and migration. That is my group. Apparently there's quite an interest in that specific topic, so we are a big group. So Group 4 will remain here today in the hall. Group 4 will remain in the hall. And then Group 5 that deals with safety and security in rural areas will be facilitated by General Makoba, and they will go to where Group 4 was yesterday, one of the rooms next door. Yeah, give me a second to get to the names quickly. But there will be people outside to guide you, but I'll give you the names quickly. Romanus, Group 5 will be in Romanus. Group 3 will be in Tiberius. Group 2 will be in Augustus. And Group 1 will be in Claudius. But you will note that there are notices on each one of the breakaway rooms. You will be able to identify the group that you need to join. Minister, with your permission, we've used a bit more time. We've planned to finish the group discussions by 12:30. We would like to stretch it to 1 o'clock, so that we break 1 o'clock for lunch, and then 2 o'clock we will come, and we will then start with the second session for today. So if all the group activities can be concluded by 1 o'clock, please, people will then break, go for lunch. After lunch, 2 o'clock, we come back to the venue. Everybody happy? Thank you. Let's break for our groups. Thanks.
Can we please settle down? Thank you very much. Please, if there's somebody outside, can we just assist by calling them in? The minister is on his way to the plenary. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The Minister of Police has arrived. Let's just settle down, please. May I kindly request that the two speakers, while Minister is making his way, thank you, Minister. Very good afternoon to you again, and I trust that you had a great lunch and you feel reinvigorated and you are ready for the discussion that we're going to have on technology deployment in the South African Police Services. And I want to invite to the stage Mr. Wayne Orchid can come and join us up on stage, as well as Prof. Brietska from the University of Pretoria. Thank you very much. Minister, we're going to proceed to plenary session number 3 under the theme of harnessing technology for a safer South Africa. And let me take the opportunity to welcome a trailblazer in technological innovation within the South African Police Service, our very own Lieutenant General Mavundla, who is the Divisional Commissioner of Technology Management Services and also serves as the Chief Information Officer of SAPS. General Mavundla has a distinguished career as a senior police officer and has spearheaded the digital transformation of the SAPS, ensuring that technology is not just supportive, but also is responsive and central to modern policing. And we're going to see more about that. General Mavundla's area of study deals with business information systems. Her work strengthens operational effectiveness and enhances data-driven decision-making in positions in SAPS, ensuring that we are a future-ready institution. Please won't you join me to welcome Lieutenant General Mavundla, the Plenary Program Director, please.
Let me take this opportunity to greet the Minister of Police, the Deputy Minister of Police. I nearly said Bushielo. Deputy Minister, my apology. And let me greet the House as a whole with the Deputy National Commissioners and the head of the DPCI. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm going to just stand on the protocol that has already been observed. Well, the theme, as it indicates, that harness the technology for a safe South Africa, it just means that. It means that SAPS must continue adapt technology investment and deployment strategies to meet the evolving expectations of their leaders and the public as a whole. The plenary task is to validate how applied outcome-driven leadership and operations can extend the impact beyond the challenges that we are facing. How will emerging trends in the digital transformation, as we all talk technology and we talk artificial intelligence and surveillance technologies, could alter, adjust, and/or adjust the way in which SAPS operate? Because this is such an important issue for the future of the policing and crime prevention, it is not surprising to see all of us in this room and supported by the academics and the business discussing these opportunities and topics that are related to technology. How these are generally dominated by a focus of theoretical and philosophical aspects of technology in innovation in the field, with an overwhelming focus on the implications that are so wide in what our societal limitations are. The approach on this topic must practically bring us to realization we are already here now. We can't be talking about the past, what the past should have done. We are already here. We must just realize how can we take ourselves out of the challenges that we are facing, challenges of demographics, challenges of plenary in the cities, challenges that are already here. So I'm just challenging each one of us in the room that we must look at what we are facing today and not point back to say, if that one could have done that, we would have survived. We are not surviving now. We will have to survive together. I will then give over to the two speakers. The first speaker is going to speak to the subcategory of our theme this afternoon. It is Wayne Orchid, and each speaker will introduce themselves. As they introduce themselves, they will know that their presentation is going to take 20 minutes each, and the 20 minutes will be given to the audience to ask the questions around the presentations that we're going to receive. Our first speaker will speak to business again, to use of technology in the fight against crime. It's the examples of what business is using. It is Wayne Orchid. Thank you, sir.
Minister, Deputy Minister, National Commissioner, all protocols stand and are acknowledged. I'd like to recognize and greet all who are present. Good afternoon. By way of introduction, my name is retired Brigadier Wayne Hackard. I serve as the Head of Security at Anglo American Platinum, and am very honored and humbled to be presenting to you today on behalf of Business Against Crime South Africa, with whom we have been working very closely and more particularly towards supporting their strivings and commitments and support to the National Logistics Crisis Committee and its extended mandate. If we look at, and I'll just get the clicker, my apologies. If we look at the rapid advancements in the world of technology and digitization, all inclusive, whether it be access systems to tracking to artificial intelligence applied across many fields of function, then I think we can acknowledge that there is a tremendous opportunity for the South African police and ourselves in a partnership to really benefit the eradication of crime in South Africa. Crime in South Africa in the past 10 years has taken on significant levels in terms of increase of tenacity, resilience, and complexity. And to address this, it requires an absolutely holistic approach where every entity is the best that it can be, and I want to say probably as modern as it can be. SAPS already utilizes a significant amount of digital and technology aids out there. We've heard General Pinar yesterday during the session 5 in the afternoon list several areas where SAPS is already using, aspects that they are still considering and working on, and it's heartening to see. It's a reality of life. We live in a digital and a world of technology. In terms of partnerships, and that's why we're speaking of technology from a partnership perspective in SAPS. In terms of partnerships, if we look at policing partnerships, and here we'll deal really with more the level reflected by business-police partnership involvement. We know that partnership policing extends right the way through various tiers, right up to CPF level, where we have many CPF representatives here currently. But if we look at partnerships in the business perspective, you know, I could stand for an hour and speak of them, but can call out a few just off the cuff. If we look at cash in transit, we had a very good presentation yesterday by somebody, or an input by somebody during one of the discussions, on how the interaction is happening between cash in transit industries and police, to the point where there's even joint representation in the NatJocs, joint operations, intelligence-driven operations. In our own space, we can look at, for example, critical infrastructure, and a lot of really good work that's been done in looking after and regaining control of what was an absolute onslaught on Transnet critical rail, freight rail infrastructure. I will speak a bit to the N4 national route operations, where we've stepped in to support on what became a scathing increase in spiking of vehicles. Illegal mining is another area. And then I want to call out the E2 project by Business Against Crime South Africa, a project which I personally believe has massive potentials in terms of expansion of scope and optimization as a resource nationally. In this presentation then, we certainly don't want to be dictating or opening the eyes of SAPS to what technology we should be using. In fact, the presentation, I would certainly hope, spurs food for thought in terms of the following items. Let us have a look at how, from a partnership perspective, we absolutely drive the improvement of SAPS capabilities. So enhancing the capabilities in terms of the technology and digitization sphere. Where are the opportunities for skills transfers? There is a myriad of skills in the private sector. And what are the mechanisms we can create or build or foster to bring those into the SAPS realm? And when I say SAPS, I'm talking policing and the fight against crime, which is all of our fight. Technical expertise from the outside. I've been in 2 work sessions now where points were raised on, I think it's level 2 reservists that can be brought in to bring in expertise such as cybercrime, forensic analysis, and expert evidence, etc. How do we absolutely optimize those? And then very importantly, how do we create the room for private sector partnership with SAPS technology strategy? Because the one thing I'll be doing consistently and definitely at the end of the presentation is to challenge all of us to say, how do we look at things completely differently? If we have a technology strategy, how do we look at that and enhancing it from a total different perspective? And I think therein lies a significant opportunity for us. What I want to do today is take you through maybe 2 case studies, simple case studies. But I certainly hope it will articulate how it would have been previously with a normal police or security intervention, and how that exact basic strategy is significantly enhanced by the introduction of digitization or technology. And whilst I'll be speaking in 2 specific arenas, I will ask everyone in the room to consistently take that and draw that into the space of, if we applied the same rationale in investigations, in intelligence, in operations, in basic police management, where would we get to at the end of the day? The first area I want to speak to you about is what transpired in terms of Transnet and critical freight rail infrastructure that was suddenly targeted. In around 2023 or thereabouts, we saw a significant increase and onslaught by very organized large syndicates on various freight corridors in the country. In our own space, we saw, for example, that we had critical issues in the Northern Cape on the iron ore corridor. Now, the iron ore corridor, you can only do iron ore by rail. You cannot do it by truck economically. When we realized the problem and the limitations of Transnet, local SAP, community policing forums, etc., at that stage in Northern Cape, we rapidly undertook a work session within our own ranks between our own tactical services and our partnered, I want to emphasize, our partnered drone suppliers. We had already started developing a model in our own sites where we realized drones were extremely efficient. And I'll go into a bit of granularity on the model because I think it's important to visualize how this transpired. If we put the same problem to SAPS or ourselves or Transnet Security 5 years ago, the response would probably have been something along the lines of observation posts, maybe static posting of security, and pro and reactive vehicle patrols, which is a force multiplier. For the operational command people in the audience, you will understand that you cover far more area with vehicles. So that was the basis we took, and we started from there. The first phase was to bring in long-range drones, When we say we use drones, we need to really go and understand the difference in drones, and even that is evolving as we speak. So we started with long-range drones because the restriction with the multi-rotor is your flying time. It's 15, 25 minutes, areas 3 to 4 kilometers, etc., so it limits your operational area. So we introduced long-range drones. Long-range drones with an hour-and-a-half flying time, distances, safe distances of 15 to 20 kilometers, and because of their sheer size and payload, probably of the best camera technology available in the market. And we deploy these with tactical resources. So if we wind the clock back and we did the same patrols without the drones, the criminals just know, wait for the patrol to pass, take them 2 hours to turn and come back, gives us 2 hours to cut lines, etc., etc. The drone is a whole different kettle of fish because you see nothing can hide from it, and your ground forces are directly directed to the criminals, to the exact pinpoints where they are. But we picked up a bit of an issue because the drones pick up the suspects, but when you deploy your team, the long-range drone doesn't have very good hover capability and it is not agile like a multi-rotor. And we changed the model. So what you see in front of you there would be typically the big drone in the center with 2 teams on either side, and it's covering 15, 20 k's either way, 15 kilometers. And the minute it picks something up, we would then dispatch the tactical team with a multi-rotor. The multi-rotor has the benefits of stealth mode. If a criminal's lying hiding, it just strobes above them, etc. Your efficiency goes from an impact from very low to extremely high. Now the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And on the iron ore corridor, it took us about 2 weeks to reclaim control and then sustained 380 days with 0 impactful incidents. At the same time, we saw serious issues developing on what is referred to as the northern corridor, which was subject to a lot of attention by the NLCC. And we then, through Business Against Crime South Africa, made a similar offer to support on the Chrome Corridor, again with the same results. So the Chrome Corridor, Chrome trains had fallen from 7 a week to 2 a month. The coal industry was talking about retrenching 30,000 people because they couldn't move the coal. And again, within weeks, we could collectively, working alongside SAPS, Transnet Security, local security service providers who also donate hours or resources to protecting the infrastructure. And again, a total turnaround impact. And the good news is that Transnet has adopted that model, and we are now, since August last year, off the line, and they're sustaining it. They're sustaining the control. So let's hold it with drones, and I'll just, on the next slide, just show you the next level of evolution and where we are. We're currently piloting on one of our sites whether this model can work or not, the drone in a box. I think for border policing, the previous model can also work. On border policing at a border post, if you effectively controlled 15, 20 kilometers either way, we would argue that the sheer logistics to further move illicit goods in or out of South Africa becomes quite problematic, and that model could work. Drone in a box is a next level. It's where you'll have the box mounted somewhere in a protected area, and somebody in Johannesburg in a control room or your super command center can task that box with routes, patrols, patrol times in Bloemfontein. And it does everything on its own. There's no pilot involved. The pilot sits in the control room on this side. Now, I want to step away from drones. So we can see that in that operation and that intervention, which you could probably pick up and put down in various scenarios, that's not the only technology. What we further brought as industry is 2 things. The one is geoplotting, and you can see the map on the side there. So the first thing is that we plot every single incident, whether it's rail or whether it's the N4. I'll touch on the N4 now. And we build up. You can absolutely visualize, and I won't speak to the GIS plotting, which the next speaker will speak to, but when you look at it, you can exactly see what's happening with the crime, where it's being displaced to. And then we take that same geoplotting data, the incident data, and we put it into Analyst Notebook. Analyst Notebook, which I'm sure organized crime and the intelligence agencies are very, very familiar with. And Analyst Notebook takes that and gives us the complete breakdown in terms of your patterns, your analysis, times of day, days of week, what types of vehicles, what types of incidents. And all of this we bring together. So you find that what historically would have been a simple patrol has now turned into something which is so efficient because it is digitally and technology driven, steered, and guided. And the benefits of this are tremendous. In last year, we saw a significant increase in the level of spikings on the N4. I'm sure you're all aware, it was all over the media. Everyone was in a bit of a frenzy. And again, we reached out to SAPS, community policing forums, local security companies who were volunteering resources onto the N4, and we proposed a similar model. And I can tell you, if you talk, people often say, oh, things take time. I wonder if it was 6 or 7 days from the day that we reached out to SAPS till the day that they authorized, welcomed the intervention, and we initiated the joint operations. There's been an almost immediate improvement simply because of the technology. And besides incidents coming down, there have been at least 11 or 12 that I'm aware of, where because of the drones, the SAPS teams or our ground teams get to victims who are spiked before the spikers even get to the vehicle. I think the story goes on, and I'll close in terms of the case studies with an operation 2 weeks ago, a joint operation we had with SAPS. It was incredible by any standard. Dual SIM GSM radios shared across the operational teams. We had body cameras that were live streaming from hundreds of kilometers away to the National Joint Operations Center. We had a drone which SAPS authorized for the operation, live streaming capability into the National Joint Operations. I want to say that for a multidisciplinary operation, it was high by any standard and extremely good. And I think it's an absolute showcase of what can be done from a partnership and roping in technologies that you don't necessarily have yourself, but that certainly are out there. If you apply this same rationale, take this and take this into investigation space or intelligence. In our own space, we have an online intelligence platform where we've built, for example, and it's off the shelf. You tailor-make it yourself. All our incident data goes in there. We've retrofed 3 years of data, and it uses AI. If I ask my analyst any sort of comparisons, how many incursions of a mine with arms this year, January to March, versus the past 4 years, within seconds, it's out. And then the analyst gives it to the Power BI person, and they bring it into Power BI, and we get very demonstrable data graphics and pie chart displays. Our case management, our investigations, we used to carry dockets like SAPS does. For the past year and a half, our docket investigation is digital. Everything, the whole dossier is digital. The manager does docket inspections online. If the person doesn't carry out the task by time, the system automatically alerts the manager. It's that type of thing. So it's about applying this rationale throughout. I'm conscious of time, so I want to say the challenge to all of us, and we're from a large organization. Large organizations come with bureaucracy. When I sat in a meeting 2 years ago and said, we need drones now, in a week we could see that to go in-house the drones would take us over a year and a half. ROCs, compliances, civil aviation. We made an immediate decision to say, we will find partners who we will develop with ourselves. They will deliver now, because the requirement is now. And we are now in the phase of appointing pilots, and we'll go the whole route. But the bottom line is the requirement was then and the decision is then. There's 2 things I want to impress upon all of us. A requirement, an absolute requirement. Speed of decision making, speed of execution. If any of you sitting here today decided there's an intelligence platform, we want to try this, I'm going to be brave and not stepping on any toes in the room. There's going to be somebody from supply chain, somebody from IT, somebody from compliance. There will be several people who will give you every reason and an arduous path you will need walk to get that done. And 8 months down the line, it's going to be on 3 different desks at head office, and the opportunity would have come and gone. Disrupt yourself. If you find the solution, be that disruptor. Be that proverbial thorn in the side. There's a better phrase I can use, but it's being recorded. And get it done. There is so much available out there. In terms of your technology strategy, map out perhaps what are key areas in intel or investigations or stations. What do you think is out there? Rope in private sector, put the problem statement. You'll be surprised at the amount of solutions that are there. And you can't fix the world in a day. But I'm already thinking the 5 stations that have been chosen for the project, there's one to start. If it comes to these type of interventions, why not something like this per province to support organized crime operations or any other operation? I'm really just sowing the seed. But it's going to take conscious decision and a changed thought process. It's come up with a solution today, implement tomorrow, and let's work out the stumbling blocks. Let other things take their course, but there are people you can bring in to deliver now whilst you walk that route, and that will be our ask. I'm going to end off by saying, and this is a quote by yours truthfully, there is no silver bullet to the eradication of crime. But I honestly believe that in technology and partnership, there certainly is hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orchard, and your controversial issues that embedded into the into the halt in government by not making decisions, and we trail on the time and we lose what we could have found. I'm now going to allow our second speaker before we get to the questions. It's our Professor Gregory from the University of Pretoria. He's going to speak to the pivotal GIS. How could it secure our environments, and how can it take us to the places where we need to be as crime preventers and combatants? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm, like my fellow speaker, truly humbled to be in this company and presenting to you something that's very dear to my heart. A welcome to the Minister and the Deputy Minister, and it goes without saying that all previous protocol observed. I used to live in New Zealand for 6 years, and when I would give a presentation in a similar environment, I would have to give a Maori greeting in Maori, and that usually freaked me out because I don't speak Maori. So this is a slightly less of an intimidating introduction. Can my presentation be uploaded? So my name is Gregory Breetsker. I've also noticed that I'm the only academic on a panel in the 3 days. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Is it a good thing? Okay. I'm going to try really hard not to sound academic. Okay. So I would call myself a spatial crime researcher. I've been in this space for 20 years. I first got interested in this in the Wemapan serial killer when Kim Rosmo from the FBI was sent over 22 years ago now to try and get an idea of where the Wemapan serial killer was possibly located. And this really fascinated me from that outset and drove my research interest in this area. In true academic fashion, I'm going to give you the structure of my talk today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the background. I think it's important from an academic perspective to talk a little bit about theory, but you can snooze off in that slide if you want to. I'll look at why GIS for crime. So why is GIS important in crime? And I look at 3 uses. And how I structured this presentation today is I look at how those 3 uses of GIS could be used, and I look at what we've done so far. And I think you'll be surprised that we're usually very harsh on ourselves in terms of what we've done in the geospatial realm in understanding crime. We've actually done quite a lot, and I'll demonstrate that to you. And then within each subset, I'll explain what I think could be done in the future and how we could kind of ramp this up. And then I'll end with some challenges and then speculate on the future. Hopefully I've got a little bit of time by then. Okay, so this is the theory slide. If I asked anyone here, why does crime occur? Everyone will have a reason for why they think crime, what's the cause of crime, right? For the last 200 to 300 years, sociologists, criminologists have hypothesized of why crime occurs, right from the biological, which was terrible 200 years ago, through to today. The one that's of most relevant from my perspective and from a GIS perspective is the one that's being covered at the moment. But there is an arrow pointing to the social disorganization theory, which is the fourth from the bottom. This theory, which was born from the Chicago School of Urban Sociology, it was the first time researchers said, well, let's not focus on the person that's committing a crime. That's important. What motivates that person is important, but let's also think about the geography. Let's think about where these crimes are occurring rather than just focusing on the individual. At the time, 80 years ago, this was the academics were actually rejected and they were laughed out, but this notion 80 years ago has resulted in geography being seen now as the sine qua non in crime analysis. The importance of geography in understanding crime causation. If you can understand the geography of crime, it helps with what the mission is under the banner there to prevent and combat crime, if you know the geography behind it. Moving forward 60 years or so, a branch of criminology emerged called environmental criminology. Some of you may be familiar with this term. This is not criminology of the environment like rhino poaching. It's a branch or a school of thought within criminology that focuses more on where crime is occurring. We know uniformly in South Africa, in any country in the world in which crime analysis has been done, that crime does not occur randomly and it doesn't occur uniformly. It's clustered together in space, right, and in time, and usually as a combination. It also analyzes the environmental factors that influence crime. There could be neighborhoods, police precincts, wards, districts, streets, and the research in the United States now is even showing that it's not even a street that's a hot street. It's often one or two properties within that street that's accounting for the most crime in a whole precinct, right? So it's drilling down at the scale. So the focus on environmental criminology is understanding the space. What happens then in the 1980s and 1990s is you've got the proliferation of large-scale data sets, population data sets, the development of desktop GIS, and you get this discipline or this, the analysis of crime using GIS software. As I mentioned at the start in my introduction, there's three uses of GIS for crime that I'll touch on now. The first is crime mapping, the second is spatial analysis, and the third is neighborhood level analysis. And I'm not going to go into each now because I will dive into them shortly. On the right-hand side, unfortunately it's blocked out, what all of those three encompass is resource optimization. In the last day and a half, in almost every plenary or breakaway session I've been in, there's been the issue of budget and money. If your budget is constrained or your resources are constrained, you need to deploy optimally. You need GIS in order to deploy optimally, right? And hopefully that will become clearer as we go along. So in terms of crime mapping, this is conventional crime mapping. You can identify crime hotspots, and that's pretty rudimentary crime mapping. If you know where crime hotspots are, it's quite easy to do predictive policing. If we know why an area is a hotspot area, which is more leaning towards spatial analysis, we can predict where crime could be based on where it is already, right? It's community empowerment. Crime mapping empowers residents to stay informed about crime trends and collaborate with law enforcement. And someone in the breakaway session this morning mentioned about SEPTED, and it's something that I'm going to touch on as we go along in my presentation, the idea of crime prevention through environmental design. If you're able to do conventional crime mapping, this is not analyzing crime data, it's just plain mapping or mapping crime rates. It can help city planners to design environments that are safer for residents. So in terms of crime mapping, what do we know or what do we do? So The SAPS releases crime statistics, as we know, quarterly, and the data is freely available. There are other organizations or institutions, such as the ISS, that give a spatial face to these statistics, which is useful. Data is often at the police precinct level, which is a very coarse level of aggregation, so it doesn't really allow you to narrow down on crime hotspots, but it's a good starting point. And there are other companies that are also using online mapping platforms in this space. Other academics in this area have also used anecdotal and secondary data sources to develop crime hotspot maps. Again, there's nothing analytical about these maps. They're just descriptive, but they're still very informative, as they allow directed patrols or tactical operational units to specific locations rather than a generalized area. From a crime mapping perspective, I think we should raise awareness of crime statistics and crime maps and these platforms, disseminate crime statistics more readily, and build online platforms for communities to report crime. I stumbled across an interview last week with a new company called Community Wolf, which allows you to use WhatsApp to report crime in your area and be informed. So I'm sure we're all on WhatsApp groups in our complex or in our neighborhood that deals with a road closure or a pothole or something about refuse removal. This collates all the information and allows you within a geographic area to join a WhatsApp group on your specific area and report incidences of crime. It uses AI technology to search for words and common phrases per geographic area that allows you, if you don't want to get pinged every second with a WhatsApp, to get a summarized report. So it's these kind of platforms that I think are going to become more and more involved, or at least ubiquitous. So what about spatial analysis? And this is where I think we've done quite a lot in this area from a research perspective. Again, crime pattern detection. We can detect crime patterns. We can see how they're changing over space and time. We can use that information to predict. There are companies, private companies in South Africa that have software that allows a certain level of confidence in predicting crime patterns. And then, as I mentioned before, with SEPTED, it allows us to, at least city planners, to plan the optimal location for streetlights, CCTV cameras, and just generalized public spaces. So what do we know from a spatial analysis perspective? Well, South Africa actually has a very long history in this regard. 27 years ago, a paper was published by Larry Zitzman at the University of Stellenbosch, and on that map there on the left-hand side, he mapped the location of crime in 2 police stations in Paarl. That's Paarl and Paarl East. And on the middle map, what he did is he just simply plotted the crime over land use patterns to try and get some kind of spatial correlation about the prevalence of land use and its relationship to crime. And on the right-hand side, he just simply did a count of the amount of crimes occurring within various buffer distances surrounding the police stations, as well as the count per crime segment, per street segment rather. Fast forward, many studies have been done on spatial analysis of crime. The study by Schwabe and Schurink 25 years ago was funded by the old South African Department of Science, Art, Science and Technology, looking at, and so forth, looking at analyzing spatial crime patterns. Fast forward to more recently, and loads of researchers in South Africa has looked at what generates and attracts crime in South Africa. We know this from the empirical research that we've done and South African scholars have done, that things like shopping malls, schools, parks, and even toilets are generally considered as crime attractors or generators in South African society. The study that looked at toilets was a study done by the Yale School of Public Health in Khayelitsha, where they mapped the location of toilets, outdoor toilets, and they mapped the location of crime, and they saw the clustering together of sexual assault around these toilets, with women in particular and girls at risk when they walk to the toilets and back. Okay, so even things like that, but we know this, we've got the science behind it. If we look at law of crime concentration, we can see that crime is concentrated in South Africa. It's concentrated at the neighborhood level, it's concentrated at the street segment level. Work done 10 years ago showed that 90% of rhino poaching occurs within 2.5 kilometers of a road. All the use of GIS. If I just quickly reflect back on that previous slide, there's this notion that really irritates me, and I believe it's driven by the media, that crime is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. The data doesn't show that. And there are issues with crime data, and I will touch on that and the challenges. But if you look at the data that's available, if you look at a police station, Khayelitsha, for example, and if you look at the data, and again, concerns with the data notwithstanding, 80% of crime will occur in 20% of neighborhoods. But if you just take those 20% of neighborhoods that account for 80% of the crime, within those 20% of neighborhoods, it's 20% of the streets in the 20% of the neighborhoods that account for 80% of the crime in those 20% neighborhoods. So the research tells us, the scholarly space tells us, that crime is heavily concentrated in even high risk or high crime precincts. This is incredible intelligence used from GIS, done by researchers, that is, for me, a good news story if you can have a good news story. It shows that the geographically targeted interventions should have exponential effect, right? This slide from colleagues also shows the temporal aspect. Now you can imagine combining the spatial aspect with the temporal aspect and seeing how that can inform tactical and operational units. Here, murder, as we know, concentrates on the weekends and in the evenings, and robbery most of the time occurs in the day. There's other research from the spatial analysis that we know. If you increase green space, the empirical research in South Africa shows violent property crime goes down. Minimally, it's 1.5%. So you could say, well, what's 1%? Well, if you're looking at the numbers of crime in South Africa, 1% is quite a lot. If you're looking at 18,000 homicides, or roughly reducing that by 180 would mean a lot to the parents and the families of the people that are victims to these crimes. We also know through the research in South Africa that a very hot day increases the risk of violent crime. And there's a lag effect to this regard. In other words, it's not just the day that is hot. There's a lag effect. The next day and the next day and the next day is also an elevated risk, although it declines, right? Colleagues yesterday mentioned at the ISS, the hotspots policing exercise, so I won't talk about that, and conscious of the time. Again, using GIS to run an experiment that has some kind of tangible benefit. And then finally, from a spatial analysis perspective, the use of GIS within SEPTED. On the far left-hand side, you've got a violence prevention to urban upgrade project done 10 years ago, in which the perceptions of crime from students were mapped, and the map in the middle is a recreational precinct which was redeveloped based on the information, the mapped information from students. The middle map is a map from one of my postgraduate students. And what she's done, and this is part of her work, is she's mapped the location. That's the Hatfield CID in Pretoria. What she's done is she's mapped the location of all CCTV, all crime attractors and generators, alcohol outlets, restaurants, nightclubs, bars, of which there are a few in the area, if you know the area. But she's also mapped the location of capable guardians. She's mapped where there are CCTV, where there are patrollers on bicycles, where there are patrollers and people walking. And she's mapped safe routes for students that leave their exam at 7 o'clock in the evening in winter, and they need to walk to their student housing. And she's done that on the right-hand side, the different routes based on whether she's leaving during the day or whether she's leaving during the night. This we're integrating into an Hatfield CID app, which will be available to students for free on their app, the University of Pretoria students for free on their app from next year. Whether they use it or not, it's up to them. But the capability is there. It's a small thing, right? But I think it will have big, at least from a student who's perhaps new to the University of Pretoria and the surrounding areas, it's quite beneficial. The third and final, from a spatial analysis perspective, I think there is much more we can do in this space. Again, I've got kind of my research academic hat on, and it's a way of being, I apologize. But there's so much more we can do from a spatial analysis perspective. I think when I was putting this presentation together, I was thinking that we need a better mechanism, and perhaps it's my fault, in fact, I think it is my fault, through which these results of the studies can be disseminated to law enforcement officers. And we need to engage, or I need to engage, with law enforcement agencies to see what their analytical needs are. The previous speaker spoke about spiking on the N4, right? But researchers and academics are also there if there is an uptick in cash and transit heist, to be analyzing that data. Is there a difference in modus operandi if there's been an uptick in the last 3 to 4 months compared to what's gone on before? By modus operandi, I mean a spatial modus operandi. Is there a spatial change or temporal change or a spatial temporal change in what's happened before? So that's an improvement. Finally, and I'm not going to be talking about this for too much because I don't believe that the police are responsible for socioeconomic drivers of crime. This is my personal opinion. But doing neighborhood level analysis can allow us to identify the root causes of crime. We can map, if we know areas, and this is something that I feel strongly about, if we can map areas that are high crime, we can also map areas that are low crime and try and understand what are the drivers of the high crime areas as well as the low crime areas. We know from research that the location of offenders in South Africa is associated with the spatial incidence of 4 broad factors: low social status and income, a large and young family, unskilled earners, and high residential mobility. We also know, in terms of offenses, from a lot of research done by numerous authors at the bottom, that the causes of crime at the neighborhood level, with all caveats accepted, is generally driven by divorced and separated, father deceased or estranged, and young male population. One of the most disturbing statistics I came across last year, and this really gives me pause for concern when we talk about crime rates in South Africa, is Statistics South Africa last year indicated that less than a third of birth certificates in 2023 in Gauteng had a father listed as on the birth certificate, which means that either the mother doesn't know who the father is, or the mother chose not to list the father. That's a sign of a family instability, which is a major risk factor for offender development in crime. So there's a broader discussion to be had, but I don't think this summit is the place for that. What should we do? I believe we should undertake more localized ecological analysis research. One of the criticisms of research and scholars is the fact that, oh, well, you take too long to do anything, right? That's a legitimate criticism. But if there are parallel tangential issues that you would like investigated, that's not something as urgent as the previous speaker said, then that's something that surely the scholarly space is open and available to doing. I like the idea of resilient communities. This is an inherently spatial issue. We've mapped the location of neighborhoods in Khayelitsha, for example, that have very low crime, but they should have high crime. So you say, why should they have high crime? Well, they share the same demographics and built environment structure as other neighborhoods that do have high crime. So then the question is, why are they resilient? Why do they have low crime? And the neighborhood, if you look at the map, right next door, 2 kilometers has very high crime. So we're trying with our students to try and understand it. Is it because there's an influential person living in the low crime neighborhood? Is there a church? Is there a community center? Is there a swimming pool? Is there a park? What is it about it? Again, a GIS problem and a GIS solution, hopefully. So I'm almost done. In terms of the challenges, as I mentioned, data availability and quality is a big one. There are technical barriers and that I'm well aware of in terms of infrastructure and internet access. There's financial constraints, interagency coordination and support. I'm also not naive to the fact that there are there are very unique challenges in South African society. The previous speaker in the breakaway session before lunch, one person mentioned the challenges of policing some areas of South Africa. Doing GIS analysis on the left-hand side is easy. Doing GIS analysis on the right-hand side, capturing data, encoding data, less so, right? There's crime over-reporting on the right-hand side, under-reporting on the right-hand side, and over-reporting on the left-hand side. But we can throw our hands up and say, well, we can't do anything. Or we can use with what we have and move on. The future, my colleague mentioned AI. I believe that's very strong as a future space in terms of GIS and crime. Mobile applications, real-time crime mapping and reporting, crowdsourced crime data. I mentioned the Community Wolf application. And I know that most insurance companies in South Africa currently have real-time insurance dashboards, right, which provide real-time information on their customers. When you sign up for that app and you just scroll and you just say agree, you don't know what you're agreeing for, right? So be careful. That should be. What the future I don't want is when there is no police. I had a theoretical discussion a few weeks ago with someone that said, what happens if there's no police in South Africa? South Africa could be the first country in the world that doesn't have a police force. And I looked at him and I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, there's over 11,500 private security companies in South Africa. If you're an affluent person, you most likely report your crime to private security, unless you've got insurance. And if you're less affluent, you may, if you start to self-organize and localize to a street level, that we should not want in this country. How could and should we do overall? My previous speaker mentioned partnership and collaboration, and I can't agree with him more. The only change I would make to what he said is add academia, add research. We are here for you. We want to support you. And we sadly don't work for money. I wish we did. My wife tells me all the time, leave academia. We want students working on projects, looking at issues that may be relevant to you, your police precinct, your district, that we can help with. There are, and I've visited all of these institutions, embedded in universities or research institutions in that very specific country. It never fails, I never can understand how a country with such a crime problem like South Africa doesn't have one of these institutions embedded in an academic institution that's there to serve the SAPS. So that's my final clarion call, that's my pitch, and I'm happy to discuss this and anything else in the presentation with you all in the next 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our two speakers. They said a mouthful and we would want to engage on that. Whilst we are engaging, we should put in mind as to why do we want to do all of these things? Why? The why will get us to a point where we are able to measure ourselves. How are we doing right now, and how would we do if we adopt such technologies? In adopting such technologies, we do understand that they will be able to help us in fighting crime. If we still do not understand that, then we are in the wrong occupation. The unfortunate part is that there are challenges, and these challenges are facing the basis of these technologies that are very equipped with the artificial intelligence that needs to be implemented. But these are the partners that are saying that we can assist you in this, maybe not with the infrastructure, but we borrow you the technology that we are using and show you how to use these technologies. GIS is an existing tool in the organization. When we plant the crime where it happened, as it is reported, GIS is there. We are using it, but probably we are not using it efficiently, as we have to realize the effectiveness of our services. As we look at the use of the technologies that we need to use that have been articulated, but not that we are forced to go to those specific technologies, we just have to know what is it that we want to do, in where do we want to do that, therefore the how do we want to apply such. I found that the two speakers have resonated to the local levels, that we need to go down to the local levels and understand our geographical area and the communities that we are serving. How are those communities commuting to work? They're probably commuting on a train, and they wake up at 5:30 or 4 o'clock. They catch the train as far as 10 kilometers or even more. And within those specific areas where they are walking to the train station, is there crime happening? Do we know? If that crime is happening in that area, how are we expected to react to such? As we are looking at all of these technologies must bring value. We are not the only country that is found to be in this situation at this time where we have budget austerities. UK had budget austerities for the likes of from 2009, and that's what the studies are telling us. Within those budget austerities, we are given this opportunity that we must merge with those that are able to forge the technologies that are existing and be able to use these technologies effectively. As we are engaging, I would like to ask the panel to indicate probably what technologies are playing an important role in the criminal fight against crime. And that question is directed to Wayne. You've articulated the technologies, and how can we then bring together these technologies to fight the crime? In the main, we want to prevent crime and combat crime, but we cannot say which one comes first. Is it combating? Is it crime prevention? Both can come first. It can be intertwined in the use of the technology. The second speaker has articulated the way that GIS can play a pivotal role. In saying so, our speaker is looking at how can we improve our safety of the people within the areas that we know crime happens there. Because this data is sitting with us, but we are not using the data to drive our operations. In aligning to where is this crime happening, maybe we need the training and the schooling and the updating of our technologies that are existing within our own hands, and we are not really using them effectively. How can wearable technology improve the workspace? Gregory, I am positioning that to yourself. And how is this AI transformation working in the safety management? And those would be the four questions of two of each, and I will then revert to the audience. Thank you.
So, General, you'll just remind me of the questions if I missed them. Firstly, in terms of what technologies are currently assisting crime fighting, and I'll probably speak in private sector space at this stage. There are various categories. A big piece of what we're using and which we're finding a game changer is that we have in terms of AI-backed intelligence or analytical platforms. So where you're using historic data and current data to really understand the monster you're trying to manage. And if you take, previously we spoke about moving from reactive to proactive. And I think now we're trying to speak of moving from proactive to predictive intelligence, which is very, very important. So, one simple one here is there are companies out there doing extensive social media listening. They are running it through thousands of search engines, and if you tell them these words, these areas, and I want to know who the initiators are, etc., they give that to you on a weekly, daily, monthly basis. So analytics and AI-driven stuff. Operationally, it's all the operational stuff I'm speaking of: tracking, surveillance, drone surveillance, because there's a myriad of surveillance aspects available. Communication is very, very important. So, and then in terms of investigations, how we manage cases, and we're finding digital case management, which I know a lot of people in the private sector are using, is really benefiting the turnaround time and the speed of completing investigations. The reality is, you need to go and sit down and see what are the fields that I'm operating in, and then what would be those technology or digital sort of bouquets that could add value to that which we are doing. And it takes work sessions. And it's there where we would often lean on, because we just don't have all of that knowledge internally. But we reach out to peers, to academics, to people who have been around the block and done that. And it's about being a sponge and absorbing what is out there, choosing what works for you. And we're finding it is massively increasing efficiencies. You do so much more and so much more efficiently with far less resource. And don't think for one moment business has this pool of funds. I think in the current economies, everybody is extremely tight budgeted. In our own space, any technology or digitization, 3 questions. Is it massively reducing a risk or a crime? Is it significantly increasing an efficiency? Is it significantly reducing a cost? If it doesn't answer one or all 3 of those, we just don't look at it at the moment, because it will fall into the nice to have category. And I think in the SAPS space, it would come down to, again, what are the burning areas? Where do we think we would get the most value? And very importantly, how much, you'd be surprised how much I believe you'd be able to harvest at negligible cost. And yeah, again, from a Business Against Crime South Africa perspective, I think our tasking would be to keep rallying companies around this awareness and about having the opportunity to bring to the table what they can. There we go.
Are we going to share? I'm too lazy to get that. In terms of the wearable technologies, so I'm not, I did read an article, I think it was a brief published recently about the piloting of the SAPS officers wearing some kind of wearable technologies. Certainly from a research perspective, there is some evidence in some locations, at least in the US, where most of this research has been done, that it has had some kind of effect and impact on crime. But from a South African perspective, there's a lot of confidentiality issues that would probably still need to be negotiated. In terms of the AI question, like my colleague has said, I think we're only scratching the surface of what its potential is. I often say of course, AI is a massive issue in higher education at the moment, and I often say to my colleagues, I think in 3 years' time, we're going to look back at the AI engines like ChatGPT and DeepSeek, like we look back at Windows 95 now, and we say, oh, Windows 95, good grief. I think in 3 or 5 years' time, we're going to look back at ChatGPT, the version now, and going to be like, wow, we thought this was scary and intimidating. I think the potential is pretty scary. But from a crime fighting and crime prevention perspective, I think it's an opportunity. Because of course, through AI, you can combine an innumerable amount of variables that have been known to predict crime, socioeconomic, built environment, facilities data, to build probability models using AI technologies. Of course, these would need to be validated and that there can be a process to do that. But I think the potential is endless. And I think the important part from a scholar perspective and also from a SAPS perspective is to get a hold of this idea of AI and to see its capabilities. I do know of some conferences now, business conferences and academic conferences that have AI crime streams, which would probably be a good starting point to see where it is now globally and where it can go.
All right, may I have any comments from the audience, please? Please look at the hands as you carry through. Thank you very much. We only probably going to have about 7 minutes or 10 minutes to look at the questions and comments. You may continue, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, General. All protocol observed. Brigadier Masondo from Crime Intelligence Analytics. I agree with you, General, that the GI system is being utilized in the police. But when I look at the presentations, they are more on the socio-economic factors of how we map in the country more than on the crime mapping categories and methodologies. We are partially on the spatial analytics when we're mapping our crimes for analysis purposes. Now, one would want to ask the speakers, as you have already put forward your assistance within the organization, that how would you assist the new recruits that are coming in from advanced educational environments? They doing your robotics from high school. They coming from universities. We're recruiting them in the police. We need to retweak the training programs to adjust the AI systems of our training development from that level, because we have to take it down there to push it up into the organization. Now, we need to move away a little bit from giving them a pen and paper, because they are used to advanced technology from high school and from the universities. So we would like to request you, how would you assist when it comes to that recruitment process, together with the training programs, as when they go to police stations, the advanced technology moves with them. When they go on the streets, they're utilizing iPads, capturing, sending to analytics of the organization for quick processing of such particular data. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Can we have another hand there? Who's having the mic?
Thank you, General. Quick one. I think on our side, in terms of AI, we will have those drip and drops. But the biggest question is that maybe to the doctor is, how do they deal with the ethical biasness when it comes to AI? And then secondly will be, on those solutions that are proposed, are they also maybe proposing some element of infrastructure? And lastly, when can we start? Thank you.
Right, is there any other? Okay, that's the last one.
Right. General, thank you. To the Minister, Deputy Ministers, National Commissioner, I think mine is just a comment at this stage. Mr. Hackett and myself do know each other, but the strategy he was actually utilizing or showing that was used on the N4 and made mention of for the border policing environment is actually one that we've put forward as a very similar strategy without even consulting each other on that. So I think it's something that can work. We are looking at the ports of entry and 15, or sorry, not 15, as you mentioned, 10 kilometers therefrom on the border lines to actually start segmenting that into zones and working together with the BMA border guard in relation to the SAPS border policing and actually seeing how we have quick reaction teams with drones, and that's already looking to be in place. We are also going to be looking at the provincial level, however, where we will be looking at the longer border line. We will be looking at the crime pattern analysis, Professor. As you've well mentioned, we'll be looking at the hotspots of where there is actually smuggling taking place across the border lines and so on, and then intelligence-driven operations, where we will actually have provincial tactical teams working again with drones, long distance as well as tactical drones when they actually need to get onto ground and actually start pursuing criminals that are smuggling goods over the borders. So these are part of the actual new strategy. There was much said yesterday about what is the role of the BMA and the SAPS in the same space. This is where SAPS is going into its classic policing role now of trying to prevent and obviously starting to combat the crime in the border environment, which is going to then mitigate much of what you're experiencing inland when we do our job well in that environment. So we're giving that space back to the BMA when it comes to border processing, being security guards at ports and so on. We are however going to be taking up the classic role of the South African police now in the border space, utilizing technologies, as you've well mentioned, utilizing the actual GIS systems to better focus the assets we have when we're talking about some 4,800 kilometers just on the land border and our sea border line, which is also not excluded from this as well. I'm going to stop there, General. Thank you. Just a comment on that, just to say that we are actually going to be looking to embrace this for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to allow the panel to respond to one of the questions. It's a difficult one. It needs planning. Do you agree? All right. Now it's 15:27. We started at 14:27. We started late. We may then break to our groups as they would be announced by General Rabi And in those groups, I'll just urge people to look at things that we can use now and be able to make a difference in the way that we are policing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, General Mavundla, as well as the panelists. I think that sets a good tone for our discussions in the breakaway sessions that we're going to embark upon now. Minister, we just want to flight the work groups for day 2, which is today the second session that starts at 15:30 to, as the Minister said, on Tuesday till we finish. So once commissions have fully exhausted their discussions, they will be then free to leave. May I, before I read the themes, can I call out the facilitators? You can come and join me in the front. That will be assisting us today in facilitating the different work sessions. The first breakaway group number 1 is Major General Pillay. Breakaway group number 2, Major General Gabela. Breakaway group number 3, Major General Makhahamale. Breakaway group number 4, Major General Buthelezi. And group 5, Brigadier Lala. Thank you very much. While they're making their way, Minister, we have 5 areas that we'll be looking at in the different commissions. And I think you have indicated already to the front desk which group you'll be joining. The first group will be dealing with digital access, transforming community interaction. Number 2 will be dealing with leveraging technology to combat crime proactively. And Group 3 will be dealing with technology in crime solving and intelligence gathering. Group 4 will deal with technological solutions for policing. And the last Group 5 will deal with technology for police safety and station security. Okay, so group number 1 is Major General Pillay. You will go to outside this venue, okay? So we put it in red there because I think we had a big uptake of group number 3, which deals with technology in crime solving and intelligence gathering. So I'll start with that. Group 3 is going to remain in this venue. Okay? Group 3. Where's group 3? Okay, I think, can I request the facilitators? I'm not sure. They're very far away. Can you come through so that we can see your... Come through. General Mosekiri wants to see you. So Commission 1 will be in Claudius. Commission 1. Commission 2 will be at Augustus. Commission 3, as I've indicated, which is dealing with technology and crime solving, will be in this venue. Commission 4 will be at Tiberius, and Commission 5 at Romanus. Are we fine? So when we finish, you can grab your coffee outside, and there's some popcorn for you. Go to the commissions, and when you are done, you may depart. We will convene tomorrow morning again at 8 o'clock promptly. Thank you very much, Minister.